Let people filter in here just a little bit before we get started, but welcome. Thanks for joining me today. I know we're kind of wrapping things up, and I know most of you probably were able to join one of the two award ceremonies that we did yesterday, and joined with our guest speaker, Paul from Google's Creator Relations department, which is new at Google. And if you didn't have a chance to see it, I thought Paul gave a really timely presentation, and one that's definitely worth going back and kind of skimming through if you missed anything from yesterday. And hopefully you've been following along with just the different updates that we've had as a part of this New Year's evolution. Today we're kind of closing the chapter on New Year's evolution, and one of the reasons why is because we're in the new year. And it's time to kind of turn our eyes towards the future. And I'm excited to share a little bit more about that with you today. So I'll be answering questions at the end. If you have questions as we kind of go through stuff, there's a Q&A box here. You can enter your questions in, and after we finish, I'll answer as many questions as I can. Q&A is a little bit easier than monitoring the chat, just because the chat can kind of fill up sometimes, and I'm not sure which ones are questions and things like that. In the Q&A box, I'm able to discern which questions maybe have been answered, or and mark them and things like that. And so, yeah, we'll start that as soon as I kind of finish walking through a few things here first. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen, and marketing team who's in the building here around me, let me know if for some reason something's not working. All right. Assuming everybody can see my screen, excellent. So as I mentioned, we're putting a close to New Year's evolution, which was really, for us, it was about recognizing all the different things that our publishers have accomplished this year, and really trying to recognize those achievements for what they are, the objective ones, the growth that many of you have experienced throughout this year. And not only that, I would say really trying to provide some visibility to what other publishers in our space, publishers that may be larger, smaller, what they're doing to grow and to maybe innovate in their space. And I think that that's really helpful, because as an independent publisher, it can be really difficult sometimes to try to figure out, are you on the right path? And I think that that's one of the main focuses for us in 2022. So just sort of kind of drawing out some of the things that we've done over the last month. So if you haven't seen it yet, we launched Monetization Scores inside of the Levels dashboard. So if you go into your Ezoic dashboard and you click on the little black box at the top of the navigation bar on the right, you'll see the Levels dashboard is an option. If you go there, we recently launched Scores, which sort of gives you a really good idea of what types of optimizations may exist on your site that could be allowing you to increase your revenue. And the reason for this is not so that you go in and you get a 100 score. There may be some reasons why you don't want to enable or activate certain things, but one of the things that we always want to help our publishers identify is essentially, like, are you optimized and set up to the best ability possible? And realistically, it's something that we want publishers to find easy, and something that you can sort of look at with some transparency and know, this may be something that I don't want to add to my site, or a feature that I'm not interested in, and you can kind of see the cost benefit of those types of things. And I think that that's a direction that we tend to want to lean into this year. We also spent a lot of time trying to just recognize and appreciate the different achievements and accomplishments that many of our publishers have had this year. So we've been trying since the middle of last year to provide the resources, and also in some cases too, just celebrate with you some of the things that you've achieved. And that started with really the introduction of grants, when we announced that we were going to spend over $12 million on our own publishers to invest in them And that's something that we've made significant progress toward this year, and something that we continue to find new ways to identify sites that could really benefit from that. And we're also going to step back as a part of this and really appreciate the different things that we've been able to learn from you in terms of feedback on different things. We've really made a concerted effort to identify with you a lot of the things that we've been able to pull out of data that we find helpful or maybe interesting. And I think your feedback on some of those things will help us drive decisions around what types of things that we can do to sort of help you in 2022, both in terms of technology and really expertise as well. Last year, for many of our VIP and level 4 publishers, we started adding to our team SEO experts and ad ops teams that work directly with these publishers to provide the expertise that in many cases we were finding they were going to third parties for and things like that. So we have a very high bar for expertise inside of the Ezoic building. And so I'm really proud to say that we've got some excellent professionals, and that's an area that we expect to add to this year so that we can start providing more and more of those types of service to all our publishers. And the big emphasis here at the end of New Year's Evolution has really been our achievements and awards. Many of you earlier this week received classifications and achievements and certificates in your email. And the reason for this is we really want to identify the publishers that had done everything from growing or were performing at the top of their category or niche. And we had over 20 categories or classifications in that regard. And we used the IAB standard categories for that. And we'll be publishing soon some really, really interesting data that I think will be more specific to each niche and give you a better idea of sort of what the top publishers in each category or topic category or niche are earning in terms of their EPMVs and ad rates. And that'll give you a better idea of sort of, I guess, like a target in many cases of audience and things like that. We know it's something that publishers are interested in. It's just a very nuanced topic, but it is something that I think, hopefully is directional and helpful as we sort of launch and publish that. And it'll be something that if you follow the Ezoic blog, we'll have content on. We also gave multiple, I'm getting one notification here that the internet's unstable, which would be odd for this, but if anyone has connectivity or issues hearing or seeing something, let me know and we'll roll with the punches. Okay, perfect. So one of the things that we did in addition to these achievements and accomplishments is we gave out individual awards. And in some cases, these awards went to a small handful of publishers, but like Publisher of the Year, it was only one publisher. And so as a part of this, we invested time and money to recognize these publishers. And it's something that I think, just based on feedback, we'd like to do a lot more of in 2022. And that starts really with helping you get on the path to achieve these things, to grow, to improve the performance of your site, to grow your audience, to improve SEO, to add to your knowledge of what it means to be a modern publisher, and to be ahead of many of the trends that our space is seeing. And this is something that I'm really passionate about, because you've heard me say, if you joined yesterday or listened to me speak in the past, I believe we're in the golden age of publishing. I think that it's one of the greatest opportunities to create an audience and to be able to reach people because of all the different channels and technological innovations that we've experienced over the last realistically decade, but over the last few years, it's become even more, I guess, sort of divided in terms of all the different channels that you can actually grow and find audiences on. And so we think that 2022 is a great opportunity to really step up our game in terms of how we provide services and technology to all of our publishers. So if I was to sort of categorize the 4 things that we'll be helping publishers with this year in terms of new products, features, and services that we intend to add, the first I would say falls into the bucket of increasing earnings. And I think that's a welcome one for everyone, because I would say the vast majority of all of our customers use Ezoic monetization features and technology. And that's something that I think, if I look at where we are in terms of using artificial intelligence to personalize and adapt ad placements, sizes, density, and things like that on a per visitor basis, it's still something that we're so far ahead of in this space that we really think that our publishers will be able to outperform any other solution available by a significant degree by the end of the year. And we know that that's the case now, and we think that further investments and efforts in this area will only compound. And so we think that that's something that will be visible to everyone, and something that I plan to provide some transparency to in terms of our progress towards that goal. And I think that'll be something everyone will look forward to. We're also going to really help in terms of diversifying the types of media and content that our publishers are able to produce. That means providing help, assistance, and some technologies that should make the process of creating and adding new, unique forms of engaging content to your sites significantly easier than it is today. And for many of you, just getting different feedback and seeing in surveys, something that may not even be an option for many of you today, we think will make it possible. We'll also be working on a lot of new features and technologies that we think will allow you to simplify the way that you develop, design, and engage your readers. And this goes from everything from performance, designing a site that's fast and engaging, to being able to add aesthetics or redesign a site without having to worry about hiring developers or dealing with conflicts. And I think that this is something that is badly needed. I'm a WordPress user, have been for almost since the launch of open source WordPress. And unfortunately, it's gotten far more cumbersome. And we know that the majority of our publishers are using that as their CMS, as is it's the most dominant CMS on the web. However, it grows more and more dense every time they release an update, and the native features in it have actually made it as cumbersome as many of the CMSs that came before it. And that's something that I think we can help our publishers with. And then this is why I think Paul's presentation, Paul from Google yesterday, was so relevant. And that's because one of the focuses that we know that publishers both have but find extremely challenging is how you diversify your sources of audience and revenue. We know that these two things are sort of the lifeblood of publishing businesses, and it's something that we are in a unique position to be able to offer in terms of direction, technology, tools, and services to really help our publishers diversify these things so that they're able to mitigate any risks associated with all the different channels. I think it's something that strategically any business should think about. But as publishers have seen over the course of the last decade, where an audience comes from or where funds come from that allow you to grow your business, those things can change and often do. In fact, it would be bizarre if they didn't change over the next 5 years. So it's something that we want to help our publishers stay ahead of. And without going into specifics, because I think it's something that we want to spend some time sort of being able to scope out so that we can show everyone sort of a map of where we're going to go this year. I can kind of summarize a little bit more on what this is going to look like for all of you. So I know that confidence empowers growth from the standpoint of I've seen it both in our customers, I see it in our employees, and I've seen it across the business landscape across the course of my career. And it's that when you know that you're on the right path, that conviction allows you to move faster and make decisions that are, in many cases, larger investments of time and resources, because you know that the payoff is worth it. And I think that really starts with helping us ensure that our publishers know that they're set up and optimizing for their goals to the best of their abilities. I think Scores is a really great example of what that can look like in the form of features. But I think there's a lot of other areas where we can really help our publishers with that and remove some even the more cumbersome elements of managing your site with Ezoic. I really like the idea of giving people the ability to do as much or as little as they would like as it relates to optimizing their monetization. You can think of it as flipping a switch and doing everything that you possibly could to set up your site to the optimal level for revenue or UX or whatever, what have you, all the way down to being able to manage even the smallest of details as it relates to that. And I think that that's what we've seen from our customers over time is that flexibility is sort of something that's desired by everyone, regardless of size. And I think one of the things that we know that requires is unmatched earnings from advertising. And I think I have some additional thoughts on that I'll share with you here in a moment. But I think one of the big ones for us is being able to help our publishers know that they're utilizing and leveraging the best technology and accessing the most valuable advertisers for their audience and for their site at all times. And I think that starts with being able to show that in terms of transparency as it relates to where that comes from. And also in terms of being able to understand a little bit more about what the impact of different optimizations or leveling up, for example, being able to identify exactly where those benefits are coming from. And I think one of the things that I would tie into that as well is being able to add content to a site that adds additional value to an audience and advertisers. And I think that I alluded to that earlier. That's something that we intend to help publishers with this year. And I think in addition to that, one of the things that we've learned over time is that there's a lot of other technologies and third-party services that our publishers need to grow. But this adds to overhead costs. And so you reach a point where you ask, how do I grow my revenue and make investments in growing that revenue at the same time without knowing if it's going to be effective? And I think one of the areas that we can really help with that is you've seen with things like Leap that we've been able to replace in many cases hundreds of dollars worth of technology that publishers are spending money on in the forms of plugins and services. And I would say that that's definitely a trend that you can expect to continue with Ezoic. We will continue to add features, tools, and services that publishers are spending money on now that are adding to their overhead. And we'll continue to add those as just additional value to our platform. And I think this will allow you to streamline how you invest in your business, how you add content, and how you do things faster than maybe you have in the past. Maybe partially because you haven't invested in some of those technologies and things like that as you think about what do you need to create good content? What do you need to execute on an SEO plan? What do you need to expand the types of content that you create? And I think that's one of the big areas that we expect to add features to this year. And this is my favorite. Turning dreams into goals. And I've seen both this year and over the past 7 or 8 years working with publishers at Ezoic that in many cases, the things that seem impossible or challenging or out of reach, all of a sudden become possible. And a lot of times it takes a lot of patience and a lot of hard work. And what we see is that our publishers that stick with it and continue to invest in themselves and their sites, they grow. And that's why I love, if you go back and you look yesterday, some of those legacy award winners, those are publishers that outside of their experience with Ezoic for many cases, well over 7 years, those are publishers that have been, digital publishers for over 2 decades, basically since the internet became the internet. And, I think that there's a lot that we can learn from them and sort of their persistence over time. And so I think one of the things that we want to help publishers do this year is move faster, see results quicker from their investments and their time, and then also be able to diversify where they extract revenue for their business from, and where they get an audience. Being able to mitigate those risks is really important. And then being able to balance how they do that. So I mentioned before, being able to manage as much or as little as you want as it relates to monetization. I think we'd like to be able to add that is something that publishers are able to do across all the different types of features and services that we can provide. And I think you'll see that we're investing more this year in adding value in terms of both services and technology to a pretty significant degree. So I would expect that if you liked a lot of the new additions at the end of last year, I think, yeah, it really is just the beginning. And I didn't get into specifics on a lot of the different tools and features that we plan to launch this year, because I think one of the things that I want to be able to do is kind of give everyone a roadmap for sort of planning out how you can prepare for some of these things, because I think in many cases it will allow you to sort of kind of know what time and energy put into your business is going to make the most sense. And so this is a better idea of sort of kind of the specifics that you can expect. So new tools for producing and monetizing your content, improvements to our AI and automation so that you can better optimally extract revenue from advertising, features that enable you to basically monetize new forms of content, or find new ways to enable monetizing your audience, tools that make improving your site easier. So you can think of this in terms of site speed or revenue, but also UX, being able to find ways to design and develop your sites faster and easier than you have in the past. And then I mentioned sort of at the end of my intro that, you know, we've added expert service providers to our team here. So we have actual in-house experts working with many of our publishers now. And that's something that I think we'd like to scale in a lot of different ways and forms to all of our different segments of publishers, from Access Now to VIP. And I think being able to work together as a part of a community, I think this is one of the things that has inspired me the most this year, is being able to get into different communities and interact with our publishers. And in doing so, I've been able to see just how much everyone is able to help each other. And I think that's something that we want to facilitate and you know, find ways to connect publishers so that they can help each other and grow. And I'll kind of summarize before I start taking questions a little bit around something that I think is really important, something that I intend to spend a little bit more time with our publishers on later this year. So two major media businesses this week raised their prices. And this kind of speaks to a little bit what Paul talked about yesterday, and I think it'll give you a nice overview of where we're headed this year. So ESPN has a deal with Endeavor, which Endeavor is a public company, and they recently bought the Ultimate Fighting Championship. So it's a combat sports league, professional league, and they did a deal with ESPN. And so now their pay-per-view prices are rising for the third time in the last year. So the audience that pays ESPN to watch the UFC, the prices for them have gone up. Netflix, also a media business, raised their prices on their subscription plans. Netflix actually has been really disciplined in raising their prices. The first time they've raised their prices in 3 or 4 years, I believe, maybe even longer than that. So both of these media businesses raise the price of content to their audiences. Now, both of these price raises look exponentially different to the content creators. So let me explain. Everyone on this, I'm assuming, it'd be odd if it was not the case, is a publisher. So as a publisher, you're creating content. It doesn't matter what the platform is or what the format is, or even the type or category. You're a content creator in many ways, or run a content creation business. And when you think about the Netflix and ESPN price raises, they look far different to the content creator, although it looks the same to the audience. And so ESPN has an audience that comes to watch the UFC. The UFC is a public company, and they did a deal where they sold the rights to their pay-per-views and all the broadcast rights to ESPN. Now, in the UFC's case, the content creators are the athletes, and the athletes are essentially kind of beholden to the UFC. There's not a lot of other combat sports leagues that provide the same sort of professionalism and pay that the UFC does. And because of that, they have to negotiate directly with the UFC. Well, the UFC is not actually the one that's communicating with the audience or selling the content to the audience in this case. Because of the deal with ESPN, the UFC is essentially the sole negotiator with ESPN for their audience, for the content creators. So if you're a content creator, in this case, and you're the biggest star versus you're just someone that's trying to make it, you have no competition for essentially negotiation. So if the UFC says, hey, we're going to cut your pay by 50%, your options are pretty limited. Now, if we go over to the Netflix side of the fence and we look at Netflix, who's also raised the prices to their audience, Netflix negotiates directly with the content creators. So I've got the little folks there from Squid Game. It's a Netflix was a globally popular Netflix show they added this year. But if you're a content creator that's providing content directly to Netflix, if Netflix said that they were going to pay you 50% less, you would be able to go and negotiate with any number of different parties. There's, every day I feel like I open up the news and find a new streaming app is getting ready to launch. So your options to negotiate are higher. And so if you create great content that an audience wants, that gives you the ability to then negotiate with Netflix or other parties to increase the amount of money that they pay you. And that might mean they raise prices to the audience, but you actually have some power in this relationship. And that's one of the biggest things that I think is a risk to our publishers. And one of the biggest reasons why we've allowed split testing in our products and built the product that we did today. And this is something that next week I'm going to do another webinar, and I'll walk you through exactly what I'm talking about in this example and how we intend to, in 2022, help all of our publishers beat the ad industry, use big tech versus letting them use you, and then grow faster in 2022 than you ever had in the past. And that's because many of the things that we're adding this year are going to give our publishers leverage to diversify where and how they produce and distribute their content, and how they price and extract a fair value for their content from any of the different channels that they may be working with, and even with their audiences directly. So you can follow our social channels, or your Levels dashboard has a little news feed in it if you haven't noticed it before. And we'll be broadcasting the link to be able to sign up and join me for this here shortly. And that's something that I hope that everyone will be able to join me on, so that I can speak a little bit more about this in long form. But it's something that I have the utmost confidence that if you join, you'll get a better idea of how we can help you this year and how you can plan to be able to grow this year in spite of any headwinds or anything like that that may be headed down the pipe through big tech or who knows. Realistically, that's why we built our platform, is to empower all of you. And I want to show you exactly what I would do if I was in your shoes and how we can help next week. So I promised I'd answer questions, and I seriously always say this, and I mean it. I will answer as many and all questions as I can get in. I see that we don't have a couple thousand on this time like we did for Customer Week. So yeah, I won't have to just wait for the laptop to die this time. However, I'm happy to stick around and answer any questions I can. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stop sharing my screen and start opening up the questions box here. Johan asks, will you show the Publisher of the Year votes? Um, yeah, we will. We're happy to share them. And I know Johan was interested because he actually got quite a few votes. I think was Johan number 2? Yeah. Next question. I have a question about originaires. So I direct you right to support, but let me see if there's not something in here. So I've got another question here relates to WordPress files, and it seems like I can't really glean from this exactly what's going on, but I would say I would take a look at, if you're getting originaires, it's usually the host and they're blocking IPs, probably because you're on a shared server plan. If not, you usually have the flexibility with a dedicated server, any firewalls that you have access to be able to whitelist Ezoic IPs. Go to support.ezoic.com and you search originaires. At the bottom of that support article, there is a file, and you can use that file to whitelist IPs if you have the ability to do so through a firewall provided through your host or CDN, or plugin or technology on your site. And if you're on a shared server plan, you can ask your host if they're able to whitelist. If not, you could use a certified seamless Ezoic partner or use Ezoic's free WordPress hosting if you'd like the transition. Otherwise, most hosts with a dedicated server plan will cater to that. And that's something that I think should provide a good framework for what to do next there. And I'm reading kind of the rest of it, and I would just say I would touch base with someone either in support or Twist, and see if that doesn't get you a good answer. And if not, there's the Ezoic support community. So if you go to that little black box at the top of the navigation menu, there's a way to access the Ezoic community, and through there you can create a forum post, and I know our team monitors that, and that way other members of the community could potentially help with whatever issues you have. So question is, publishers from India, what kind of EPMV could they expect this year? So what I always say about EPMVs, and people trying to ask about averages. So publishers in India, anywhere from $1 to $1 million. And I mean that. And the reason is because geographic location, while a factor, is one of really many factors that go into how much money advertisers are willing to pay for an audience, how much you're able to extract over time. There's a lot of things that go into actually building ad rates. You can actually increase how much different parties pay you for your ad space over time, just by controlling for many of the things that Ezoic AI does. So I think people think of testing as trying to find the best, but in many cases, what Ezoic is doing with its artificial intelligence is developing higher ad rates over time. So you can think of this in terms of every visitor is worth a different amount to advertisers. And as you adjust the supply, meaning the ads available, whether that's the density or the size or the location, you can actually increase the demand or get higher bids out of that demand over time as well. And so that's one of the things our AI does. But if you want to get a better idea of sort of how advertisers for Indian audiences are trending, you can go to adrevenueindex.ezoic.com, and you can actually categorize by country, and you can see how ad rates are trending for Indian audiences and things like that. Arno asks, can you keep us informed regarding the end of third-party cookies? So I've said this before, and I find that I'm more and more sure about this, and more validated in this thought, and that is that it won't matter for publishers. In fact, I actually think that it's going to help all of our publishers. I find that a lot of people in the space keep talking about it as if it's a problem for publishers. It's not. It's a problem for advertisers. If you look at digital advertising, the amount of money that's filtered into digital continues to grow. it's siphoning away more and more market share from traditional sources like print or TV. And that's not going to change. Digital, regardless of cookies or not, is still one of the best in terms of being able to track and identify the value of your ad spend. And so if you think about it, cookies haven't really existed on Safari for a while, especially Apple mobile devices. And when cookies aren't even available on any of the devices, it creates a fairer playing field. And not only that, it's going to force advertisers to actually have to cater their ad spend to their audience a little bit more. Right now, cookies have sort of made the advertising industry a little bit lazier. As someone that's a marketer and advertiser, and has been in the past as well, if you look at it, it's been really easy to just throw a budget into Google or Facebook with an cookie tracking pixel and say, here you go, Google, here you go, Facebook, spend my money on my audience. And that's led to a lot of waste. And it's also one of the reasons why a lot of things like domain spoofing fraud and stuff like that have occurred over the last 4 or 5 years, and why publishers are stuck having to add an ads.txt file to their sites to try to help them solve that problem. I think all that goes away with third-party cookies, and it actually creates an ecosystem where advertisers have to worry more about the money that they're spending. And I think that's good for publishers, especially if you're publishing good quality content. Robert asks, can you share anything at this time on how Ezoic plans to help publishers grow and diversify their audiences? Yeah, so in terms of specifics, I would think about it in terms of the types of content that publishers are able to monetize. Most of our publishers using our platform right now are publishing written content. And so when asking publishers and looking at just some of the different feedback mechanisms that we have, publishers want to create more content faster, and they also would like to diversify what types of content they produce. You could think of this in terms of video. One of the reasons why in many cases publishers aren't producing as much video is twofold. It's either more expensive and it's a larger investment, or number two, they lack the expertise, the resources to be able to produce that. We intend to solve both those problems for our publishers this year, and make it easier to produce things like video and also written content at a lower cost and in a quality form. Just being able to produce content for the sake of creating content, we think ultimately is invaluable, meaning not that it's so valuable that it has no price, but that ultimately, content that has no value to the end user is worthless to everyone. And so that's something that we think that we can help publishers with quite a bit, especially when you think about video, being able to add content that's relevant to your site. Video does add an additional form of revenue. It's something that can be indexed in search. It's something that can be both independent from an article and on an article, but at the same time, it has to provide real value to the end user for an advertiser over time to really find value in it. And not doing that, I think, is a risk to the business. Now, in terms of audience, I think of it in terms of where are audiences across the web. Well, if you look at user behavior, a lot of them are on various social platforms and networks. The second largest search engine in the world is YouTube. I alluded to video earlier. And so there are a lot of opportunities, I think, for publishers to start building their audiences, but that means creating direct relationships. So if you can extract these audiences from these platforms, that's great if they visit, but if they only visit once and you're not being able to capture those true fans and create an experience for them that engages them or allows them to even compensate you for being able to manage those direct relationships and things along those lines, those big tech companies are still winning, and these major platforms that are emerging will ultimately be something that captures content and locks it away. And that's something we don't want to happen to our publishers. So we have some solutions in mind that will help publishers both extract those audiences, keep them, and monetize them in more ways than they have been able to in the past, not just from ads. I see our publisher of the year is here. Tony, congratulations. Tony O'Neill, Ezoic's 2021 Publisher of the Year. Daniel asked, any chance of using some of the most successful publisher Ezoic videos so far, highest number of playbacks? I'm guessing he's asking about insights into what types of videos are working for different types of publishers. So I'll give you a bit of a preview of some of the things that we have planned this year. But to answer your question directly, it's all over the map. So whatever. So people always ask like what short video, long video, and usually people are asking because they want to know either what generates the most traffic or what generates the highest revenue. And the answer is it depends. It's going to depend on the user in the same way that if you were to say, what's the best for SEO, a really long article or a really short one? It depends. What makes more money, a really long article or a really short one? And it depends. So there's a lot of other factors that go into play. And I would just say that the biggest thing is providing who is on that page or who is searching for that video or that content, exactly what they want is going to be the thing that produces the highest number of playbacks, the most views, and the most money. And that's something that I think that we can help our publishers do better than ever before. And one of the things that we intend to do as well as a part of both our marketing initiatives and some of the things we do with the product is giving our publishers the ability to kind of have a little bit more transparency into where they stand, whether that's in terms of the amount of content they produce compared to their peers, or something like this, where you're asking about the number of playbacks and things like that. But I also think when you think about video and just how vast and large our entire wealth of publishers is globally, in some cases, some of the best content to add to your site might be content from another publisher. And I think that there's some ways that we can facilitate that, especially with something like video, so that all publishers can kind of work together and grow revenue, traffic, audience, among ourselves. Do you see video ads increasing this year? It depends on what you mean by that. If you mean, well, I can kind of answer it in all three facets, which is number one, are there going to be more video advertisers? The answer is exponentially yes. If you look at eMarketer or any of the other major research firms like Gartner that are talking about where advertisers are dropping, the majority of their budgets this year, it's in digital, but one of the largest increases in terms of digital advertising investments has been in video. In addition to that, if you look at where the growth in video in terms of revenue for advertising has gone, I think it's $16.8 billion and 47% expected growth for short form video. And that's video that's consumed on social platforms, on mobile phones, found in search and YouTube. And if you look at the growth for something like television or connected TV over the top devices, the growth is only like 3%. So if you're an advertiser or even a content creator right now, everyone is trying to figure out how they're independent publishers creating for niche audiences. And that's where a lot of the money is going to flow this year. As it relates to Ezoic and our investments in helping our publishers with video and extracting revenue from video, I would just say, wait and see. I don't want to oversell it, but I would just say that if you're interested in adding video and exploring the space as a publisher, you're in the exact right spot. And stay tuned. But I would expect some really big announcements and major innovations from us there this year. Someone is asking about Canadian publishers and if we can help support Canadian publishers and unique needs in that market. I'm sure. Yeah, I mean, we have thousands of Canadian publishers. I'd probably need a little bit more in terms of specifics on exactly what I can see you listed your sites there. I don't want to share that with everyone in case you don't want me to, but thank you for the kind words. But yeah, if I had a better idea of exactly what that is, I could probably speak to it more directly. If there is something that, you know, is truly unique to a Canadian market that we're not providing, let me know. We cater to all of our markets in a lot of different unique ways. So, but yeah, Ezoic is very well designed to be, you know, global in its nature and being able to serve all different types of audiences and types of sites. What is the criteria for leveling up? Levels.ezoic.com really has like very comprehensive information on this. And yeah, so I would just say the really easy to understand version is your traffic and revenue. Each level has a threshold there, and it's not something that one of the reasons we did this is because I hate in this space so much this sort of like focus on visits or you know, being something that you extract and you know it somehow gets you something new. The truth is that as sites grow, there's additional demand sources that can become available, and we wanted to make that as objective as possible so that when we were able to add additional ad networks or ad partners or something like that to our publishers, that they can know exactly when that is. So it's not something that is necessarily based on, you know, whether or not, you know, I decide that it's worth it or not. We want to make this a very clear, objective thing for publishers to be able to see. So that's the motivation there. What was the address to search ad rates by country again? Oh, adrevenueindex.ezoic.com, and maybe a member of my team will throw that in the chat there. How to increase ad revenue. And they're asking about Google AdSense and Ezoic. So the first thing I can say is it's pretty common knowledge, so I don't want to take away time from other questions, but I'll say, number one is Ezoic is built to be an open platform. That's why we have all the different forms of testing built in. And one of the reasons that we have things like mediation, which I don't know how many of you know what the word mediation is or would have even known what it was if not for having to sort of learn it through Ezoic. One of the things I think we can do a lot better with our products is sort of identifying exactly what something does as opposed to what it means in the ad industry. But mediation allows you to connect all various ad networks or sources that you maybe already have a relationship with, the most common one being AdSense, and it plugs into Ezoic. And what I mentioned earlier about competition is Ezoic is a Google partner, so we have access to and provide all of our customers with Google's Ad Exchange, which is sort of the big brother to AdSense. It actually is in, I would think of it as like a Wall Street trading floor for all ad networks. They plug into it automatically, so it includes all the advertisers inside of the AdSense and thousands of other ad networks bidding in it. In addition to that, we add lots of header bidders, direct relationships, and as publishers grow, we're able to add in additional demand sources like Amazon A9 and a lot of other unique types of advertising networks, native ad providers, things like that. So that all comes bundled into Ezoic by default. Now, AdSense and having your AdSense account linked to it is really critical because it's how we know for sure, guaranteed, Ezoic will always earn more than something like AdSense because number one, if your AdSense is linked, it should be competing with all the other demand partners inside of Ezoic. So that means that even if AdSense was performing as good as all of those partners, there's still no way that it could compete and earn more than it would by itself. And in addition to that, when ad networks all have to compete against each other, the rates get higher. And that's why split testing is so important, is because it allows you to see apples to apples exactly why something is earning more than another. And if someone doesn't want you to do that, there's usually a really good reason. It's kind of a historical pain point for the publishing industry, and something that we partially built the platform to fix. So I would say look at support articles in terms of setup and best practices, because if you're having trouble with Ezoic revenue compared to what you were doing with AdSense, it's 100% something with the configuration. And I would guess AdSense is probably not linked properly as well. Johan asking about material for Publish of the Year nominees. Yeah, I think that would be really a really apt thing to do, because I think we had some really excellent publishers towards the end. And that's something that, yeah, I definitely think is worth bragging about. So great point, Johan. Anita's asking about Paul. Yesterday he mentioned Google Stories. She said maybe I am missing something, but how do we add ads to Google Stories? Can they have them? Do you think it's worth it? So it's multiple questions there. But the first is, it's a little bit complicated in general how you add ads to stories. And if you read forums across the web, primarily most cases, even publishers like the Washington Post that have put ads in their stories, they're still using AdSense. And I would say publishers have been pretty underwhelmed with the performance of that. That's something I'm pretty confident that if there is value there to advertisers, that we'll be able to probably improve compared to all the other types of solutions that are available. But I would say the biggest benefit of stories, in my opinion, is that it's something that users potentially want. Now, web stories haven't really caught on the same way that stories and social platforms have. I used to see a little bit more in terms of I would search something and I would find a story as a result. I don't see it quite as much anymore, although Google says they're still adding them to search results. They are showing up in Google Discovery a lot more. So I really like that as a form of traffic. Our friends at Chrome Unboxed have done an awesome job of optimizing for that. They actually did a presentation on it, or partially on that. If you go back and you find our 2020 Pubtelligence, which was our remote one, they did a special session on that that's worth watching. But adding ads to Google Stories with Ezoic is something that I think we should probably get some documentation on. It's changed. That's one of the reasons why you can't find anything in support on it now, is because the way that you had to do it before and how you have to do it now is slightly different. It's a lot more difficult, especially when you use many of the plugins, because the plugins natively don't provide a mechanism for adding ads, even Google's own plugin for creating stories. And so it's something that we can add to a list of things. Marketing department, add some content that we can create. But in terms of performance, I would say it's a little bit underwhelming from what I've heard. However, I think that the real advantage here is to be able to potentially attract and gain an audience through them that maybe nobody else can. It would be unique. There's not a lot of competition for stories out there at the moment. Got it. So the gentleman asking about Canadian market, Adam, if you want, you can send an email to Tyler Bishop at ezoic.com, and I can forward your message to someone on the team that might be able to help you and your network of properties get set up. Are the classes for Level Up Learning going to resume again, and will applications for grants be back to? Good question. So grant applications actually haven't stopped. We still send applications, and one of the things that I've been trying to do too, and I've got this from feedback, for some reason, publishers really hate filling out those applications, or some number of them. And so if you filled out an application before, we're actually just keeping those on file. So each month, especially for the growth grants, we identify sites that have been growing for consecutive months, month over month, usually for a couple months at a time. And then we use that information with a couple other factors to pull a list of a couple hundred publishers. And then each month we either look to see if they have a grant application on file, and then review it to see if they're, that would be a good fit. We have a team that looks that over. And if they don't have an application file, then we actually email them, send them a message in the dashboard and ask them if they would be interested. One of the things that we've been building as a part of the dashboard is the ability to sort of automate the process of that. So you can just click through inside of your dashboard and apply, and then also be able to monitor that progress and like where it stands, things like that. But I would expect to see some new mechanisms in terms of being able to get a grant this year. We gave out well over $4 or $5 million, I think, so far, and our goal is 12. And I said it a couple months ago, and I'll say it again. I think we'll exceed that. And as far as Level Up Learning goes, we know that we had a lot of publishers that really enjoyed it. And so what we wanted to do with that program was really provide something of value in terms of learning, and then take what feedback we could get from publishers about what they liked and didn't like about that program, and then roll that into a more formal education program and way of ongoing support for each other, and sort of kind of plugging into the community, and roll that out this year. So I would say if you like Level Up Learning, I think we have something even better in store coming soon. So I would stay tuned. Thanks, Adam. Yeah, like I said, just send me a message, and happy to connect you with someone. And I appreciate the kind words. One more question. So this one is in regards to specific competitors. So it's I personally I don't like to talk about people that I think. So this question is, where do you hope Ezoic will be with publishers in 12 months compared to Mediavine/AdThrive? So I know both of those parties, and I know that publishers probably think that they're competitors. I don't think that they're competitors at all. They don't at all do what Ezoic does. And I mean that from the standpoint of their business model is completely different. We partially built our platform to help publishers rely less on folks like that. And the reason is because if you look at those parties, the names have changed over time, the ones that I hear. Those ones that I hear a little bit more often these days, but they're a third-party service provider. And to date, I don't know that they allow any testing, which means comparing. And part of the reason is because they're not ad networks. Neither is Ezoic. I mentioned earlier about where all the different ad demand comes from on Ezoic at Google's AdX, header bidders, direct relationships with advertisers, native ad providers. As sites grow, we add partners like A9, things like that. And when you look at that, that's sort of the standard. If you were to go look at the ad stack at a Washington Post or a Mashable or a CNN, or you name it, any site showing display advertising, those are going to be the exact same demand sources that they're using because it's best practices. Google's AdX is incredibly dominant in this space. I don't know if you know this or not, but Google has a really nice little ad business going. And because of that, ads are a commodity in my mind, and the minds of everyone working in ad ops. And so for me, I look at performance for our publishers in terms of being able to match supply and demand. And so the question was, where will we be in 12 months in comparison to them, or where can publishers expect to see? To date, I will guarantee you will make more money with Ezoic than you ever will with a third party like that. We've got that published on levels.ezoic. I will personally guarantee it. If you have been a publisher that's left and experienced something different, let someone on our team know. We promise you, if your site is set up well with Ezoic, you will 100% outperform someone that's taking 20 to 30% of your revenue at the end of the month. It just doesn't make sense. And I think if I was to say, chalking up the performance area of where we're going to help our publishers this year, it's to give every single publisher using Ezoic the confidence to know that there's no other option available, whether it's by handing it off to a third-party service provider and seeing a black box come back, or doing it yourselves or hiring a team of ad ops people. Our goal is to make setting up and knowing that you're set up to the optimal level, number one, easy and simple. And then number two, transparent, so that you can understand and see through your experiences that there's no other option available that would be able to help your site make more money from advertising than Ezoic. And I think if you look at our ability to help publishers with their content, add new layers to it, and also extract audiences from different platforms, and then grow those audiences and maybe even monetize them in different ways, that using data and AI and testing, I think it's going to be a no-brainer. Our goal with building the platform from the very beginning was really to give publishers the control. This space is historically one that's been filled with third parties and black box service providers that have always come out on top versus publishers, and publishers have always had an asymmetry of data and information to be able to make decisions. And part of the reason why we use AI to adapt the ad placements for every visitor is because it allows publishers to work the way that advertisers do. They don't treat every visitor the same. And if you put the same ads in the same locations for every single visitor, you put yourself already on the wrong foot with advertisers. They're able to use more data and make better decisions. And so they're knowing more about the value of that audience than you are. And being able to adapt those things allows you to stay one step ahead. Questions about Google Ad Manager, I direct you to support articles on that. Does Ezoic have a tool to filter out companies that should not be in our ads.txt file? Right now, so they asked about who and why different companies are in the ads.txt file. So as I mentioned before, we use a lot of different types of ad partners, and we add a lot over time. I know internally, one of the things that the team has been working on with some of our advertising partners is eliminating any from ads.txt files that maybe aren't in use. But one of the things to think about with that is the reason why there might be a number of different partners in there is because we test a lot. And that's very, very critical for all of our publishers, because ad networks need to compete. It's one of the reasons why we provide mediation and split testing, is because competition is good for you. And because of that, we build relationships with pretty much every ad partner you can imagine out in the ecosystem, and we test them all. And sometimes one works great for one site, but not for another. And back in the day, you might take a year trying to figure that out, and you have to worry about them trying to trick you the whole time too. It's not a very, it's a history with a checkered past. And so one that we really help our publishers sort out. And so that's why you might have an ads.txt file with a lot of different ad partners and things like that in it. It's because we're probably testing a lot of different ones on your site. So question about the Ezoic Premium Zoom meeting times and making them more convenient. I would say reach out to your account manager, or just provide us with that feedback. I think that team would love that kind of feedback, because I think they're always just trying to figure out how they provide value to premium publishers and publishers that they're working with. I know that we're doing our weekly webinars across multiple time zones. Next week, when I share with you a little bit more about where I think this industry is headed and how you can stay ahead of it, I know that we'll be broadcasting it in 2 different time zones as well. But the premium meeting, I would say just communicate that with those teams there, send them a message, or send them a reply to the webinar invite and let them know, because I think they're always trying to get that kind of feedback from our publishers. And that's it. That's the last one. So thanks, everybody. I really appreciate everyone joining us and closing out New Year's Evolution with us. And for all of you that were able to achieve something this year, or received an award for us from us, I'm really grateful for your participation. For all of you that have joined, and are on a path with us, I would just say thank you. Thank you for working with us, and I'm really excited and motivated by all the growth and really just the enthusiasm, I think, around our products and things like that I've seen over the last few months. And I think it makes it something where I look at that feedback, and I'm constantly walking around this building and talking to our teams, and we're always trying to figure out how do we make something for our publishers that adds value and gives them what they're trying to achieve, makes it easier for them. And I'm really excited to show you guys what we have planned this year. And yeah, I would say just stay tuned. I think this will be the best year yet. Oh, and where can you watch the recording? Ezoic.com/new-year-evolution. And all the recordings from yesterday and today will be up there, along with resources on our awards, certificates of achievement, some of the award winners, and a lot more. So thanks, everyone, and I will hopefully see you very soon.